Okay, so I think it's time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. It's called The Unique Challenges of Launching B2B Stores on Drupal Commerce. The main focus of this session is to answer the question, is Drupal Commerce suited for B2B stores? And I will start with a spoiler this early in the talk. Yes, it is. With that conclusion already out of the way, I just want to start by introducing myself. My name is Eirik, and I work at New Media in Trondheim in Norway. We are a digital agency specializing in Drupal Commerce. We work with both large retail chains and smaller B2B only companies and help them succeed and grow. We don't do B2B projects exclusively, but today that's what we're going to talk about. And that brings me to why I already have spoiled the answer to the question, is Drupal Commerce suited for B2B stores? And that is, we have already several success stories doing this already. And in this talk, I will highlight different aspects of this work by looking at what I think are the two most common scenarios when talking about Drupal Commerce and B2B. That is launching a brand new B2B only site to replace some other system, or adding B2B functionality to an existing B2C store. And while we're looking at these two scenarios, I hope we will learn something about these aspects around building B2B sites on Drupal Commerce, content, marketing, and strategy for B2B stores, and unique technical challenges compared to a regular B2C website. First, let's have a look at a pure B2B site that we have delivered for one of our customers. This site is what we call a gartneri in Norwegian. I tried to find a good English translation, but the literal translation would be greenhouse. But anyway, they import, grow, and resell flowers and equipment to flower shops in Norway. So all of their customers, 100% of them, are other businesses, basically flower shops or shops that are selling flowers. So this is a very typical case of a pure B2B store, which is a wholesale distributor of a type of merchandise, in this case, flowers. So before they launched their B2B solution, they had a system where they sent out order lists via Excel files one or several times a week. And then there was a deadline for when their customers had to fill out this list. This deadline would typically be on a Saturday, since the flowers should be packed and shipped on Sunday to be in their stores by Monday. So they basically had what they called an order shift, where they would sit in the office manually entering orders from Excel into their ERP system. After they received this order, either via email or I think even fax. So that's a very popular way to spend your Saturday, as you can imagine. So if something was sold out in this old system, they would have to contact the customers, for example, by phone, and inform them, work out a solution. So what we delivered for them was a total overhaul to their entire workflow, making it much more effective and saving resources, frustration, and sources of error. So sold out is now something the customer gets info on in real time. There are no more order shifts. The customer are self-served through the website. All logic around deadlines are implemented on the website, and there's a direct integration towards their ERP system for product import and order export. Now we're going to have a look at those different aspects I mentioned. But first, I want to point out some interesting traffic patterns for this site. This is particular week, and it had almost half of the transactions the entire week on Friday and within a couple of hours. This is a very typical pattern for them as well. And this is because they released new flowers Friday afternoon, and shop owners basically don't work in the weekends and during nights. So for an entire week, almost 50% of the orders are placed within a couple of hours. Now, this is an interesting technical challenge. So the server only sits idling most of the week, while it's getting totally slammed by logged in users, plus the product import and order export in a few hours every Friday. So luckily there are technical solutions to this problem, and the fact that it's so predictable makes the technical solutions even easier. It's not like it should scale to 100 web nodes in a second because of an unexpected popular product going viral on Instagram, which could be the case for a typical B2C store. And then we have this little fun fact here that we'll get back to later. But since I already opened their analytics, I just wanted to have that in there. This is their totally unheard of conversion rate. I don't know if you have looked at any graphs like this for a regular B2C store, but this is totally unheard of. And it does seem actually like there's some error in the reporting, but it really is not. We'll get back to that. So what about content and UI in B2B stores? This will vary greatly among B2B stores because of the nature of their business. As we've seen in the analytics data, the content does not need to create conversion, or either that or the content is so amazing it drives this conversion on almost 80%, but I can already tell you that's not the case. The users are on the site to do the purchase. This is simply a task for them. They need to purchase flowers to have in stock in their store, so they go to the site. So this brings us to a quite unique thing about this particular B2B site, stock. You see, flowers cannot be in stock forever. In fact, most cannot be in stock for a week even. So if the website was not working on Friday, where 50% of the transaction happen, many of these new released flowers will actually be dead shortly after, like literally dead. So it's, I would say, a matter of life and death, actually, in this case, to sell the products you have in stock. Then what do you do with content? You don't need to put your prettiest flowers or your best offers on the front page. You need to put the flowers that are in danger of death. So what we see here is not creating content that will convince the user to buy things. They are already convinced. They just need to be led in a direction as to what to buy. This is an example where content in a B2C context would be used to optimize for conversion or upsell. For this site, it makes more sense to optimize for storage time. For another site, that could be something entirely different. What's important to note, however, is that even though the content itself might not have to drive conversions, we're still able to use the same tools as a B2C site. So while it might not relate directly to the conversion, high-quality content is something that is expected also for a B2B site. And luckily with Drupal and Drupal Commerce, you get those tools for free. Another somewhat unusual UI element is what, at least in the code base, is called the container indicator. This is an indicator showing how much of a container you have filled with your cart. The reason for having this indicator is that customers will pay shipping costs based on the number of containers. So usually you want to fill up the container to make the most out of the shipping costs for your order. This is probably the only seemingly upsell-related thing on the site, but the reason it is there is not necessarily to upsell products. As you might understand, this might also lead people to take off a couple of flowers from their order to avoid starting a new container, meaning they basically downsell themselves. So the main reason for this is actually the self-help functionality. Before they launched this store, it would be a person sitting and more or less manually calculating what this would mean in terms of containers. Then it would call up the customer and say, hey, it seems you can fit 3 more of these cases, or you might want to take out a couple of these cases here to make this fit into a container. As you can understand, this is very time consuming, both for a client, which is the website owner, and the businesses they deal with. So what we see now is that where profitable focus areas for B2C might be conversion, optimization, and upsell. For B2B, it can be self-service and convenience. We're going to look at the scenario 2, one version of it. This is B2B and B2C on the same code base. This site is actually by far the biggest Drupal Commerce site in the world, or let's just say the universe. They sell books. Its number of items in the catalog varies by manufacturers from day to day, but they have actually passed 21.5 million products at the moment. We could talk about many different interesting topics from this site, but today we're going to focus on the B2B part of it. So the self-service part is also key on this site. On this site, companies can actually register themselves as customers, as opposed to having to have a pre-registered account on the previous site we looked at. There is some verification there on their organization number, but the main part is here that they can register themselves and start purchasing, but that the administrators has to approve them so that they can shop with a certain amount of credit and be invoiced later. they can start using the site in a self-service way. This site also has advanced features around company structures. And this is also self-service. So you can register the different departments in your large enterprise corporation and then add users on all of these levels so that you can decide on who can purchase things on behalf of the company within which departments. And this is made possible, I would say, because of Drupal. Here we use the tree structure of taxonomies, and this makes it possible out of the box to actually nest this kind of structure for the company terms. So the end users can actually administer this tree structure themselves and add users on all levels they have access to. And try to just compare this to having the store administrators do all of this for all of their B2B customers. On this site, that means between 2,000 and 3,000 businesses and departments with several employees on many of them. That's a huge cost that they're saving. So after a company structure is set up like this, the administrators can actually go in and use this structure and grant discounts on price lists and on all levels within the structure. Should, for example, a discount only apply to Department 2 of parent company? No problem. Or should parent company have a general price list that all departments underneath it inherits? Also no problem. The companies also have a very convenient self-service menu to look up orders and what kind of promotions and discounts they have with the website at all times. So UI-wise, we can see that self-service is a very important aspect with this site. But unlike flowers, books don't really expire weekly. So content-wise, it might not be the same focus around optimizing for lower storage time. More relevant strategy here is to show new products in the categories companies operate in. It could be around automation, for example, with regards to suggesting the right content around the semester term start. Another example can be to focus on convenience. For example, maybe a B2B customer has a specific course that they are doing several times a year, and they always need to purchase the same batch of between 10 and 15 books, pens, and writing pads for every new course. So just have that available for them and make it possible to order with one click. That's convenience part. Another interesting technical aspect for this site is the integration towards procurement systems through the OCI standard. There is a contrib module for this actually made by us for this particular site that we have shared with the community. And the interesting part of this is how it works with multiple employees in a company. You see, to set up OCI, you configure a URL. That would be the URL to the web shop, and then you would supply user credentials to the website. So basically, you're logging into the site via other means than the user form. You're logging in through the procurement system. Then you can browse the catalog and add things to your cart. However, the default behavior of Drupal Commerce is to have one cart per user. So if employee 1 starts using OCI for a purchase order, then out of the box, employee 2 would share the cart with the first employee. This makes it very inconvenient for larger corporations. It would basically mean they would have to somehow internally communicate that, hey, stop doing that. I'm using this site now, and don't add anything to the cart. Just wait until I'm finished. So what this module does is to replace the user session-based cart. So if you're an OCI user, you can have your own cart, even if your colleague is shopping on the same site in another office with the same user. And this works seamlessly with regular users, so they can still have the expected default behavior. Now we're going to look at another version of Scenario 2, which is B2B and B2C in literally the same store. This example here is from a site selling doors and windows, and their site is, at least seemingly, mainly geared towards a B2C shopping experience. But they also have B2B functionality in the same store. If you're an approved B2B customer, the experience changes slightly. One such example is around displaying prices without VAT. For companies doing their shopping here, the price without VAT is the interesting one. So this interface change will then follow the user throughout the experience, from product pages, search results, and to the checkout and receipt email. The checkout is also slightly changed to make it possible for business users to pay with an invoice. This can be increasingly challenging in other systems as more and more payment providers are aiming towards actually replacing checkouts on web stores. But with Drupal Commerce, this is absolutely possible with defining different checkout flows, for example, based on a role. So what we see here is a typical case of the B2C part of the site driving the content. So UI and general structure of the site. This has several advantages. First, this means the marketing job being done for the B2C site directly benefits the B2B site, since they are literally the same. This makes it very efficient, yes, but the total economical savings are huge here. One integration towards the ERP system is a part where you're saving, but also the savings in avoiding to use internal resources on two separate sites can be very beneficial. This is also easier for the employees, so they don't have to actually deal with different sites. It's all happening in the same site. Plus, it makes it possible to do analysis and statistics on the same site and domain. However, it deserves to be mentioned what is a real challenge, and that is mixing VAT types. This has consequences for all parts of the store, and one thing one can find out quite fast is that reverse calculating a VAT rate might not be the best idea. With rounding, percentage-based discounts, and so on. So this might be actually the biggest challenge when running a B2B store alongside a B2C store. As a consequence, this is also something you might want to do right from the start and not something you want to stitch on later. So we're approaching kind of a summary here. Let's talk about how to approach a B2B project with Drupal Commerce. So the single most important thing about doing a B2B project with Drupal Commerce is understanding the client. What is it that they're optimizing for? Are their traffic patterns strange and needs to be addressed technically, for example? Quite often, you might want to look at the processes they are using today and analyze how a brand new B2B store can make them more efficient, time-wise and cost-effective. Most of the time, a successful B2B project might not mean selling more products. It might mean streamlining internal and external processes and saving resources and money. This will then also reach into the content part, marketing and strategy for the website, and this can vary wildly between types of B2B projects. Maybe it makes sense to share content and marketing from a B2C store. Maybe it makes sense to gear content towards some of the optimization goals the business is setting for themselves. With regard to technical aspects, the first and most important technical aspect would be to decide whether the store is a standalone B2B site or if it's something that should live alongside a B2C store. There are also several solutions between there, including, for example, a multi-site or using the same code base. This decision has, of course, consequences for many things, but content marketing and strategy is also something one must take into account when deciding an architectural direction like that. It could, in fact, be based on the amount of resources the business has to pour into creating content for two solutions. So maybe they only have resources for one. This decision also affects our next point, plan the VAT handling. We touched on this briefly, but this can quite often be a hard requirement for the B2B part of the store, and you really do not want to do this in a hacky Band-Aid kind of way. You should also identify traffic patterns or structural or behavioral anomalies and plan for it. What I mean by this is, of course, the strange traffic pattern we saw earlier, but it could also be things like, do users usually have 8,000 items in their cart because of the nature of the product somehow? And then how would this work with stock Drupal Commerce? And do the store plan to end up with millions of products? Then you probably have to plan for that. And almost all B2B solutions involve some form of integration towards their own ERP systems, logistics, invoices, and other things. And Drupal is a great tool for building these integrations, and many integrations might already exist. And then create technical solution that not only digitizes processes, but ideally also makes them more effective. And what I mean by this is that if a customer is used to filling out 3 rows in an Excel sheet, then maybe do not make it way harder to do the same order through the website. There's a long GIF here, but I think we're going to skip it. So one often say that content is king on the internet, but for B2B, it might as well be convenience. Have in mind that quite often a B2B solution is looking to replace a salesperson talking on the phone or going to a place of business. And a new solution might more or less be force the customer to do this work themselves. This is very profitable for the B2B site owner. And it's very important to make this work that you moved over to your customers as easy as possible for them. This is also why I should listen to their user feedback, since they are not merely users, they are users of a tool that you have built for them. So it's a different power dynamic than a B2C store. Then we have something I only briefly touched on. Could expand on much further, but probably it could have been its own talk. But automation is a field that can encompass many areas, and something that you can use actively in your B2B store. So, to summarize, Drupal and Drupal Commerce, is that a good fit? Yes, as I have already spoiled. I will now also specify why. That is because Drupal as a CMS or CMF has endless possibilities in terms of content, marketing, and strategy for a B2B store. Drupal as a technical platform makes it easy and flexible to build out the most advanced integrations. Drupal Commerce as the foundation for this store gives us the flexibility to launch B2B stores with a huge range of architectural foundations. The Drupal Commerce ecosystem has many important building blocks for advanced functionality, saving us much time. And of course, building on both Drupal and Drupal Commerce means we benefit from a welcoming and knowledgeable community. And that's all I have time for and all I have in my slides. Join the contribution opportunities and remember to rate sessions. And unfortunately, we don't have time for any questions, but you can send them to me if you want, or post it via Twitter. That's also possible. And thanks for watching. Thanks for your time. Okay, we have 2 questions. The first question here, do I even have time for this? I can answer them really, really quickly. To Bhavin, Joshi, you mentioned about approving new users by the admin. Is this admin an organization admin or the site admin? In this case, it's the site admin. Of course, with Drupal being very flexible, you could also make it so that this could be the organization admin, but how it's structured on the site where I exemplified this, the organization admin can add users without approval directly underneath in their company hierarchy. Then we have a question for Benoit de Vos. Sorry if I said that wrong. How do you manage multiple price, content, taxes versions of a single product for different markets? Well, what we usually do is to have price resolvers that would have all of this logic built in. For example, if the prices are fetched via their ERP system based on their customer number, we can resolve the price there. And then the default in Drupal Commerce is to have the so-called chain price resolver. So if you have like a first preferred way of resolving a price for a user, then you can fall back to, for example, the price specified on the variation or the price specified by a price list, or however you structure your site. So having price resolvers for the prices is a flexible way of doing it, and you can prioritize them quite easily. Thank you, everyone.